What's up everybody? Today I'm going to show you how to tie the monster mustache minnow. This is a really cool pattern that mimics a large bait fish, and it's really good for big game like lake trout, pike, muskie, big walleye, bass, anything like that, and even saltwater. So for this one I'm starting out with a 1/8 ounce tube jig head. This one is really big, it's got a 3/0 hook, and you can tie it heavier if you want it to sink more, but I like to fish it shallow when I'm fishing for pike and muskie. And then for lake trout, I'll do heavier ones so it can sink down there really fast. Okay, so we're going to start with a white UTC Ultra thread. This is 210 denier. I'm going to start that thread just behind the head. Once you got it secured, you can flip off the tag end and tie that down. We're going to tie it down to the end of the shank. Now for the tail on this, we're going to be using bucktail. This is a natural white and brown. I'm just going to grab the white fibers. And you want to get the fibers closer to the tip because those ones are straighter. They're better for the tail. So I'm just going to grab a clump of those. Just a decent sized clump. Nothing too crazy. Then just clip them off at the base of the hair. And then we're going to hold them about 3/4 of the way up to the top and then pull out the shorter fur. This stuff is basically useless for this pattern, we just need those longer hairs. Let's just do that until they don't come out anymore. Then we're going to grab it toward the bottom of the hair. And we want to measure it so it's a little bit longer than the actual jig itself, so I'm going to go a little shorter. There we go, that should be good. So I'm going to pinch right in front of that with my other hand and then just cut those hairs so we don't have too much extra. And we're going to pinch it in right there. Give it a couple loose wraps. And then you can push down on the hair and it will surround the hook. So it won't just be sitting on top, it'll be all the way surrounding like that. Then we can go back over that and tighten it up. And that way it won't move. And then if you want, you can add a little super glue there. It's not really necessary, but if you want that added security, you can definitely do that. Okay, so there is our tail. And now to add a little bit of flash, we're going to use these angel hair fibers. These are basically a really fine flashaboo. So I'm just going to grab a few of those and just pull them out. And I'm going to fold those in half. Just like that. Then tie half of those in on one side. And we want to tie them so they're a little long so we can trim them to length. Then just pull the other ones over once you got that secured. And tie them in on the other side. And then you want to spread them out so they're not just all in one little line. You want them to be dispersed throughout the tail. Just like that. And once you got those tied in tight, you can pull them and clip them right at the end of your longest deer hair. And there we go. And we got some flash in there. Okay, then we're going to take our thread up a little bit, about maybe 1/4 of an inch in front of that bucktail we tied in. We're going to grab another clump of bucktail, and this time we're going to tie it in the other way so the fibers are going toward the head. Then we're going to fold them over, and this will create a little hollow body on this. So we want to measure that so it's about the length of that tail that we tied in, and then go a tiny bit shorter, and this will give it a natural bait fish profile rather than all the fibers being to the end. It would be too bulky. Alright, so once again we're going to clip those. There we go. Now switch them to your other hand, pinch them in right there, and do the same thing we did before. Do a few loose wraps, then just push on those so they surround the hook. And once you're happy, you can tie those down. And make sure you get those butt ends of the fur tied down, the hair. Then you can use some sort of straw, or I use this marker lid, and you can just go over and pull those fibers back with it. You don't even need a tool, you can just do it manually. It's just easier if you have some kind of tube. And just pull all those fibers back. Make sure you get all of them. Got some little short ones here that don't really matter, so we're just going to leave those. And we're going to just create a thread dam right here in front of the hair. We don't want to tie onto the hair like this, because that will keep it back too far. We want it to be a little bulkier. So like I said, just create a little thread dam that pushes up against where we tied in the hair. And that's good. So you can see that adds some bulk. It's slightly shorter than the other tail we tied in, so it'll have a nice little taper that resembles a bait fish. Okay, we're going to add a little bit more flash, so grab a few more of those angel hair fibers. Just do the same thing, fold them in half, tie half of those in on one side, and fold them over, tie them in on the other side, and separate them. Alright, pull those and cut them to length at the end of the tail. Alright, we're going to do another clump of bucktail, do the same thing. Create this nice hollow body. Again, measure it so it's not quite as long as the tail. Cut it off. Just like that. Switch it to the other hand. A few loose wraps. Surround the hook. And cinch it down tight. Then push those hairs back. Make sure you get all of them once again. And do your thread dam. Okay, and we're done with the angel hair fibers. Now that we're getting closer to the head, we're going to use some ice dub. This will create a more natural color. Like the inside of the upper body of a minnow usually is translucent, and you can see all these little blue, like UV looking veins. So this is going to mimic that. So we're going to grab a clump, stack those so they're all the same length and they're lined up. Set that aside, and then you can create a dubbing loop, or you can split your thread like I like to do. Then just stick those ice dub fibers in between the thread or into the dubbing loop. Give it a twist. Then just tie right onto that thread dam we created. Pull the previous fibers back with each turn. And we're going to grab a Velcro tool and just tease out those fibers. It'll grab some of that deer hair too, but that's okay. Okay, just push those fibers back and we're good there. Now we're going to grab another clump of bucktail. Same thing, measure it out so it's not as long as the tail. Cut the butt ends. Transfer it over. A few loose wraps. And surround the hook. It might be a little harder because it's more bulky. It's not just the hook shank anymore because we're getting up to the head. But that's just fine. Okay, tie it down tight, and then these extra fibers will just add some bulk toward the head, so we can leave those. We're going to push all these hairs back. Just do the same thing, create a thread dam. Take your time. There we go, we're getting some nice bulk. And you can see in between all that bucktail we tie in, it creates a hollow look. So it's kind of translucent. You can see through this this like bubble of hair that it makes, and you can see that eye stub underneath. Okay, a little more eye stub. Do the same thing. Just stack those fibers. Split the thread. And stick those in there. Separate them so you get a nice little noodle of dubbing. Twist it up. And tie that on. Again, hit it with our Velcro here. Alright, now we are getting up to the head, so we got to build up the thread so it creates less of a ramp, because the thread wants to slip and go back like that if we don't create a less intense ramp. So just build that up so it's more flat that we're tying on. And we want to do that to the point where it doesn't want to slip anymore when you pull on it. See, it stays there now. Okay, now we're going to do our last clump of deer hair. We're actually going to do 2 clumps here because it won't surround that head anymore. We're going to have to do 1 clump on top and 1 on bottom. Okay, so tie that in right there on the head toward the middle of the tube jig head. And we're going to separate that so it covers the top half of the jig. Kind of a halfway surrounding of that instead of a whole thing, just like that. Okay, make sure the tips are lined up and tie that in on the other side, and then separate those so they cover the other half, just like that. And now you can see we have a full surrounding of hair. So we're going to tie that down tight. We don't have to take the thread down too far that way. Like I said, this is going to create some bulk that will mimic our minnow body. So now we're going to push all the hairs back again. Alright, once you got all those pulled back the best you can, besides the little short ones, just tie that down. And this time we're going to tie onto the hair slightly, because we don't want it to be too bulky near the head. Like, we don't want the fibers to be out too much. We want them to be more back. So there we go, that's looking good. And you can cut these extra short hairs if you have any, so those are unnecessary. So now you should have hair surrounding the whole jig. And we're going to do a couple turn whip finish or a half hitch just to keep the thread stationary. We don't want it to slip at this point. And for a little added security, we're going to do a tiny bit of super glue. Alright, so finally we're going to do some more ice dub. I'm going to use a pretty sizable clump of that. Stack the fibers, split the thread again, or create a dubbing loop if you prefer. Stick your stacked ice dub fibers in there, separate them so we have an even layer. Twist that up. Make sure it's nice and twisted before you start wrapping that. There we go, and we're going to create another half hitch or whip finish right here so our thread doesn't slip again. Because at this point, since we're so close to the top of the head, it's going to want to slip onto the eye. We do not want that to happen. So we're going to add a tiny bit of super glue to our thread and not onto the ice dubbing, because we want to be able to tease out those fibers in a second. Just make sure we trap our thread. There we go. Now we can grab our Velcro again. Tease out those ice dub fibers all the way. Make sure nothing is trapped. Alright, and for the final touch, I'm going to use some bruiser blend or laser dub to create a realistic head on this thing. So to add a little more bulk, we're going to use some bruiser blend junior. This is cream. And we're going to stack the fibers just like with the ice dub. And we're going to set those right on bottom. Tie them in so you get about half of the fibers up over the head and half back onto the jig. And then, so that's just going to add a little extra bulk, but to add some length to the body, we're going to use some regular size bruiser blend or some laser dub, which is basically the same thing, it's just comes in different colors. These ones are a lot longer than the bruiser blend junior. So we're going to stack those, and those fibers should all end in about the same place like that. Now again, we're going to tie half of those back and half of those up above the head, and try really hard to make sure your thread doesn't slip. Now we're going to surround the bottom half of that jig with those fibers. Now for the top, we're going to use a more natural darker color, just to create like a little back on that minnow. So to do that, we're going to be using this Bruiser Blend Junior Alpha Wolf. Stack those fibers, flip that thing over, and tie them in so half of the fibers go back and half go forward. And we want this to just be on the very top of the jig, so make sure they just sit right there on top. And you can use whatever colors you want for this thing. These are just the colors I like for the standard, because it just looks like a generic bait fish. And now for the main part of the top, we're going to be using this tan laser dub. Stack those fibers once you got those nice and straightened out. Again, half of them back, half of them forward. Give them a couple loose wraps and surround the top part of that hook. Okay, fold the bottom fibers back. Trap those down and make sure, again, they're surrounding the bottom half of that. And we're going to take our tan and Alpha Wolf, fold that back and tie over it. Careful if your thread wants to slip, and you want that dubbing to meet in the middle, so you can just pinch it and wiggle it so it sticks together. And that Alpha Wolf is supposed to be just on top of that tan, so I'm going to fix that. Bring it so it stays on top only, so it has a nice dark top to that. There we go. Whip finish. And you will see how this Bruiser Blend and Laser Dub really brings this thing to life once you brush it out. So just get a little comb tool, brush all of that back so that none of the fibers are trapped. So now all we have to do is add the eyes. So for this one, I'm using these 7mm living eyes, kind of a brownish with some holographic. So we're just going to put a drop of super glue on each side and just put our eye right on there, right in the middle. There we go. Get those right where you want them. And this jig is just amazing. It has the profile and action of a fly, but the weight that you can fish it on a spinning or casting rod. So it just gives you more options to catch bigger fish. Okay, once those eyes are right where you want them, just let that glue dry. And now we're going to do our resin or epoxy. So I'm going to mix up my epoxy right now. Alright, now we can just paint that epoxy on, or if you're using UV resin, you can shape the head now. It's a lot easier to use the resin to get the main base, but I'm out, so I'm just using epoxy. But if you use that resin for the main base coat, you can get the head shape you want and then just put resin over top to protect it. Or if you want to use one product, you can use Solarez UV Bone Dry. It's just a nice resin that cures with UV, and it cures non-tacky, so it's just rock hard. But lately I've just been using some epoxy. And once you got the shape you want, just get a tiny bit of epoxy or resin onto those fibers and they'll hold that shape. Just barely touch them. You don't want to do too much. Just, like I said, barely give them a little tap on the edge. Okay, and because I have a rod dryer, I'm going to put this on the rod dryer and it will cure nice and evenly. But again, I recommend UV resin so you don't have to worry about that. So I'm going to go put that in the rod dryer. So here's this awesome monstrosity after the resin has cured. You can see it has a nice baitfish shaped head, and it is slightly on those dubbing fibers, so it'll protect them and help them hold this shape. Even if you try to pull them back, it'll still bounce back to that same shape. But yeah, this thing is amazing, and you know what time it is. It's time to get it wet to show you what it looks like. So here you have it, the monster mustache minnow when it's wet. This is what it looks like in the water. You can see those beautiful veins of that ice dub in there. It just looks so real. It's got that dark back and then the white belly. This thing is absolutely amazing. You will be so glad you tied this up. Thank you for sticking through this whole video. You'll be glad you did once you tie these up. And now I'll show you some footage of me catching a lake trout on this jig. Fish on. This lake has a lake trout and bull trout, so I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it's a lake trout, but you never know for sure. Ooh, that's a good one. A nice laker. Cool. I love it. Caught it on that big bucktail jig. Look at that. Oh, there goes the fish. Can still see it. Maybe I can grab it. Nope, he's gone. That's alright. We'll get another. That's awesome. Yeah, that jig. It's working great. Giant monster mustache minnow. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.